I think we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning, everybody. I'm Sarah. I'm the director here at the library. Joyce, didn't see you come in. So glad you chose to join us this morning. This program by Tom Dunphy is back by popular demand. He did this for us back in August, I think?
I think so.
The room was bursting, so we knew that there was enough interest to host it again. I will turn it over to him in just a moment. I do want to let you know about what you have on your chair. You should have a copy of the recipes and instructions from Tom, and you also have a program evaluation form. And if I can ask you all to fill that out before you leave today, there's a little basket in the back where you can leave that. That really helps us figure out what you all want. If you have ideas for programs, please share that with us. You'll notice when you walked in, we have a sourdough bread baking kit that we purchased after the last time Tom gave this because of the feedback we got. So if there are things you want to see in the library, let us know. I think that's it. So I'm going to turn it over to Tom. Thanks so much for coming.
Well, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Okay.
My name is Tom Dunphy, and I've cooked almost all my life, and I really like to do it. And I enjoy cooking, and I enjoy cooking for other people. I've done the restaurants. Well, one of my regrets is I've never been classically trained, but I did train under some chefs that were just phenomenal. So about 3 years ago, my daughter Cassie, she lives in Hortonville, and she's making sourdough bread for the farmer's market. She makes 50 to 60 loaves a week.
Wow.
And makes all of her different kinds of crackers and cookies and everything else and sells them at the farmer's market along with the produce. Well, to go back just a little bit, right after she got married, she called me up and she said, "Dad, I want to thank you." And I said, "What for?" She said, "Teaching me how to cook." And it really made me feel good. Both my daughters are scratch cooks. Well, she taught me how to make sourdough bread. And I've been doing it since. We starter back and forth when ours dies or anybody else. And I have gotten starter out to quite a few of my friends that are doing sourdough cooking. Now, I also shared it with my 4 siblings. Now, when you're doing sourdough and you're doing bread, you're going to find out that you just don't want to do it anymore. 2 of my siblings make bread all the time, 2 of them do not. So it's not a big deal, and it's just kind of flour and water. So to go into it, the first thing is basic equipment. The things that you really need more than anything else are a digital scale. And that's about it. Everything else makes it better, makes it good.
And the digital scale only costs $200.
$8.90. $8.90 at Walmart. And I'm sure you can get them out. This is the one I have. I actually spent $9 on this one. I went a little bit above. Some of the other things. One other thing that you probably should have is have a little rack to put your bread on when it's done so it cools. This is basic bread pan. I use silicone. You can use any kind you want. I've made a lot of bread in these, and everything comes out really good. These are called bannetons. This is a batard. This is a boule.
Okay.
I like them because it's using for raising. The bread that I made is this, which I'll cut up later. Gets nice lines and it's pretty. These are 2 scrapers that you need. This is a bench scraper. Everybody should have a bench scraper for your scraping. And this is a bowl scraper. When your dough's a little bit sticky and you want to get it out of the pan, just dig it out. You should have a good bread knife. If you've got a nice, good serrated bread knife, it makes cutting it so much easier. This is called a lame. What it is, it's a curved razor blade on a stick. I have really sharp knives. When you're making your bread, you're gonna wanna cut a couple slits in it for two reasons. The first of all is that it helps the bread keep its shape and it stops it from falling down. The other reason is because it looks neat and you make some cuts on it. This is just fun. This is called a Danish whisk. I have really bad hands. I've had 10 surgeries on my hands in the last 3 years. And I'm kind of unable to do a lot of things. I can actually mix bread with this. Another thing that it's really good for is mixing up starter. You want your starter to get nice and mixed up really good. This does a lot better job than a spatula, which you're gonna wanna use. This is the other thing that you're gonna need, an Insta-read thermometer. Your bread should be cooked to 190 degrees. Bread is raw, and it's not good for you to eat raw. 190 degrees, I think it's listed later, is what you're gonna want to cook it in. This is a bread box. This is what keeps your bread from getting stale. This is just a plastic one. They have wooden ones which are really neat, but I don't have any of those. I have 2 of these. This will keep your bread fresh for a week or so. It doesn't usually last that long. As Sarah said, I was just amazed when I walked in there and I looked in the back, and all that stuff back there, you can take it out and use it before you buy all this stuff to see if you like it or not. So that'll be good. Oh, incidentally, if you have any questions, just say questions. If you had something to add, please add. If I'm saying something wrong and I'm full of crap, feel free to say so.
I don't understand the 2 bowls, the oblong, like, what are you doing with those, I guess?
This is what after your bread is proofed, and I'll go over it.
Okay.
After your bread is proofed in your pan
Yeah.
that you're using, after you've got it mixed, you, then later, your second proof goes in these. That doesn't have to, you can use a regular bowl. It's just that everything fits in here really nice. And then when you tip it upside down to bake your bread, it keeps its shape a lot better than if you can just use a bowl that'll fit, but the bowl that you use is gonna be the shape of your bread. So this
Where
kind
can
of,
we get those bowls?
these, you can get them at any store. I got them, you can get them from online at Amazon. I think they're like $7 for each one, and they come with one of these covers.
Oh,
You can either put them like this, inside like this, and keep your dough in there, or you put it on top so when it rises. Because your dough always should be covered. It'll dry out, and then when it dries out, it won't be so nice to cook with. Any questions on any of this stuff?
I have a question where you bought your Danish. What
Same thing, I got this online. I think it was like $5 or $6 was all. All this stuff is the same thing with the lamb main. You can get all different kinds of ones. Yes?
Golden Harvest in Rhinelander has a lot of those supplies.
Oh, do they really? Oh, great. That's right, they do, I remember that.
And also you can buy a kit where everything's included, so you don't
Yeah.
have to buy things.
Yeah.
At one time, Roots, the juice box, had a lot of the sourdough stuff as well, so you might check
Right.
Roots downtown.
Oh, yeah,
Thank you.
great.
she doesn't know.
Your starter vessel that you're using should be at least large enough for it to double. I use a round. I have some of my old mixing bowls, and they have cover fits on it really well. When you're looking online, you'll see it in jars. I tried it in a jar. I couldn't get into the corners very well to mix it up good. So if I have a round bottom, I'm able to mix the starter up a little bit better. Every time I look online and you see this stuff in these starter kits and everything else, they always have a jar. I tried it, and for me, it just didn't work.
But plastic versus glass does not matter?
It doesn't matter too much, glass seems to be a little bit better. I mixed it all up in this, because this is what I have with covers on it, so I could bring it in when I have starter. So, let's just go to the starter. You can make starter from scratch. It's pretty easy to do, it's just a little bit time consuming. It takes 7 days. As you can see, it's just day 1, day 2, day 3, day 5, or 5 days it goes. You're gonna want to have it bubble and everything else. My starter is already active. If you do it, we're gonna get you 120 grams of starter. I use grams, I don't use ounces. Excuse me, the reason why is there are 28 grams in an ounce. And if you go 2 ounces off, you're 56 grams. So that's why when you're measuring everything, flours, everything else, do it in grams. You'll be a lot better off. Same thing with doing any kind of baking, really. You're just better off doing it in grams, and the scales all have that. When you get your starter today, if you take mine, which I hope you do, you'll want to feed it today, or put it in your refrigerator if you're not going to do it today, 120 grams of flour and warm water. Then tomorrow, or when you take it out of your refrigerator, and when you take it out of your refrigerator, you're going to want to let it warm up for at least 3 hours. It'll bubble, it'll double. And then, if you don't refrigerate your starter, you almost have to feed it every day. Every other day at a minimum. It will dry out and it won't be any good. So that's why you keep it in your refrigerator. You can keep it in your refrigerator for up to 2 weeks. And then you will, when you take it out, let it warm up and you feed it, it'll be just fine. You want to try to use the same flour all the time. I use all-purpose flour. I buy my flour at Prairie Pines and Gleason. It's a nice repackaged store. The flour I use costs 69 cents a pound. As you'll see, the protein in your flour should be at least 11%. King Arthur, which is the name and everybody says that's the flour, has 11.6% protein. The flour I get from Prairie Pines, he was really enough to get put out a spec sheet for me. It has 12.4% protein, which is really high. I use this flour all the time. I've used it for years. I drive down there and I get a lot of stuff there. When you get that flour, I made a mistake. I've used bread flour and I don't like it. Some people say that's all, some point you read and they'll say, use bread flour for your breads. I use all-purpose, I just like it better. You might like bread flour better. They had it on sale and I bought 50 pounds of bread flour. And once again, it was not a really great idea. I used it, but I didn't like the results. I'm now back to the flour that I used, the all-purpose flour from there.
What didn't you like about it? What was it with?
What didn't I like it? It was very dense. It came out dense and it didn't seem to rise very well for me. Other people said it's exactly the opposite. I don't know if it's my water or whatever it is, but it just didn't seem to rise as good, and the starter didn't seem to get as active.
Someone told me to use wheat flour to activate, to keep, doing it, then bake with the other, and mine never arose.
Well, I use a combination of wheat, the recipe that I will have later, that's what this is. I use combinations. because if you use just all wheat or all rye, it has a tendency to be too dense. It doesn't have the protein and it doesn't have the gluten.
Okay.
If somebody didn't have a scale at home yet, is 120 grams of flour about 1 cup?
Exactly.
And 120 grams of water is?
Yes,
about 1
about a cup.
Okay.
So, but that's, you'll want to use the same starter all the time. And that's why when you take my starter home and you feed it, what flour you use, after you fed it twice, it is now your starter. And you will be able to use it. When you change flours, which I found out is just, things just don't seem to work as well. I'm happy with what I do. I also use yeast in my sourdough. 2 reasons. I like the flavor of yeast, and I also don't want to wait as long as it takes to do it when you use just all sourdough. There's a time period, and I'll go through that a little bit later. I buy my yeast there at Prairie Pines. It costs $5.90 for a vacuum packed pound. There are 160 teaspoons in a pound of yeast, which gives you 80 loaves of bread. So it's a quite negligible expense. I just like the yeast. It has a tendency to rise it better, and it also has a tendency to add flavor that I like. I like the yeast flavor. I get all my oatmeals and I get all my other flours and everything else there as well. And it's a Mennonite store. In the savings in flour alone, if you buy 20 pounds, you can pay for your gas to go there and back. And it's a nice drive. After you use your starter and you're making your bread, what you have left, you're going to want to start with about 120 grams. When you add your flour and water, you want to add more flour and water than what you have left over in your starter. It allows it allows it to eat better, because it doesn't. As an example, this started out with about 450 grams of starter. And I've got 2,000 grams of flour and 2,000 grams of water. It takes a little bit longer, but in 7 hours, it's perfect. My starter's pretty active too, so you don't have to worry about not having enough starter to replenish and to build it back up.
Where are you? Excuse me. What page are you on right now?
2.
Okay.
I just lost my train of thought.
I'm sorry.
Come back to it.
Seems like you said something about adding more than is in.
Oh, yeah. You just want to add more than what you have, so you don't have to worry about it if you just have a little bit. Incidentally, if your starter dies, email me, I'll get you some.
Or make friends with someone in this room and share.
Make sure in this room. My email address is T as in Tom, K as in kite, D as in David. The number is 101950 @gmail.com.
How do you know it died?
Ooh, good question.
When your starter, if it gets fuzzy, if it has an odd smell, if it has some things growing out of it, throw it away. Throw it away, just like anything. Throw it away. Because you aren't going to have it. You can find starter, you can make your own if you want, and then, but that's what you want to do. If it goes bad, just throw it away. And I will get you more starter, or someone will.
And you said to use the same flour all the time?
It's a good idea.
Now, since we've got yours, and we don't have that flour right now, can you put our own flour now?
That's why you're going to do it twice.
Gotcha.
Sure, starter then.
Tom,
So when we make our own, when we are going home to starter today, we feed it,
Yes,
let it double in size, then put it in the refrigerator? Or
yes, yes.
And then
After
bring
you,
it out tomorrow?
after you feed your starter, and, or when you take it out of your refrigerator to use it, or after you feed your starter, you'll wanna let it sit for at least 3 hours. So it gets fermented again,
In or out?
in or out,
Of
out
the
of the
refrigerator.
refrigerator, out of the refrigerator. And then it'll, then you can use it. I'm just gonna go as an example, this is my go-to loaf. This is probably the bread I make almost all the time. I made 2 loaves. You're gonna mix together the flour. I have AP, whole wheat, I have cracked wheat. If you don't have cracked wheat, just add more whole wheat. It says it right in there. I use 2 teaspoons of instant yeast. I use a teaspoon of salt. That's all the salt there is in a loaf of bread. And I use a tablespoon of sugar, white, brown, honey, or maple syrup, any kind of sweetener. You'll want to use the sugar because it helps to ferment and raise your bread. You're going to mix up your dry ingredients just like you're mixing up all your dry ingredients whenever you're making anything. And then you add your liquids, 240 grams of starter, 140 grams of warm water. You're going to mix it. I mix mine in a mixing bowl because my hands don't work really good. Although I have used this to mix it, and you can actually do it. You can use a spoon. My mom made bread till 95 years old by hand, forever. And, but I couldn't do that. After you have it all mixed up, you're going to, it's called autolyse. Everything's got a word. All it means is rest. Just like when you take meat off the grill or out of your oven, you let it rest. It lets everything come back together. At least 10 minutes. At least 10 minutes to autolyse. Then after that, then you're going to knead it. You can use your dough hook on your mixer if you want, or you can mix it by hand. After you've got this initial part here, you have a mixture. When you knead it, and if you knead it by hand, you will feel this mixture come together and actually become a bread dough. It's amazing the transformation that you will have in mixing this bread by hand, and you'll have a dough. You'll feel it, it's elastic, it has a great feel, you'll know when it's ready. The reason why you're kneading it is it allows all the glutens to come together. After you have it mixed, you put it in a bowl, and then you have your first proofing. After 15 minutes, you grab some of your dough, lift it up, stretch it, fold it down. You do not have to do this, but this will build structure in your bread. It will make it better. You don't have to, it'll be fine, but it'll be better if you do this. And then you just rotate it all the way around. Do it about 3 or 4 times while it's proofing. It takes about 2 hours. 1 to 2 hours, depends on the starter strength, depends on the heat in your kitchen, depends on the humidity. Unless you have a fancy oven that has a proofing thing on the oven, I wouldn't proof it in there unless you're just going to use the light. The light will be, if you put it on warm, it will dry your bread out. I have a little thing that I put on, it's right over my register, and I put it over the top of the register, and it helps it. In the summertime, it won't be an hour, and your bread will be just right there. But there's all sorts of things that have an effect. One of the biggest things is humidity and hydration. After you take it out of there, and now you're gonna put it in a proofing pan, you're either gonna put it in one of these, a little bread pan, or you're gonna put it in one of these. These are what you use for flat baking. It's called flat baking. This is called a loaf. I've made lots of loaves in here. I actually wear these out. Then, after this, you wanna always cover it, whether it's in here or in here. This just fits over the top and you can cover it. You can put it in here and do another one and just cut out. I like putting it in here because you get nice little lines on your bread loaf.
Tom, could I ask a question, kind of going back? When we're doing our initial proof or rise,
Yes.
and we're stretching, you said to do it 3 or 4 times. How long in between should we?
15 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Just wait like 15 minutes.
Excuse me, so you stretch it the 3 or 4 times, then you wait 15 minutes and you stretch it 3 or 4 times
Yeah,
again?
lift it up
Yeah.
and stretch it, lift it up and stretch it, and put it back down. You think it would wreck something, but it isn't.
Can you just do that twice?
You can do it 2 times, 3 times.
Okay.
When you were making bread before with just a yeasted bread, and after the first proofing, excuse me, you would take it out of the pan, and you would press it down and you would flatten it and get everything out. You don't want to do that with this bread. You want to keep some of the carbon dioxide and the bubbles in the bread. You don't have to be real careful. If you're going to do flat baking and you're going to shape your bread, and there's some videos on this, you just take it and you put it in a round, and you don't press really hard, just a little bit. You go like this, and you turn it, and bring it back about 2 inches. Turn it, do it back like this. Do it about 10, 15 times. Your bread will come together and make a really nice loaf of bread. If you don't, it will kind of collapse. You don't have to do that, but it just makes it, yes.
Okay, so it says if flat baking, what's the other option if you're not flat baking? I see, we're putting it
In a bread pan.
Gotcha.
I just like fast baking because it seems to build a better crust on the outside. I don't make, if you're gonna make it in sandwiches, you're gonna wanna put it in a bread pan, although you can use it like this. If I make a sandwich, I just use open face sandwiches now. So,
Can you just shape your dough and then just put it on a cookie sheet and bake it?
that's what I do.
Okay, because
After-
you're putting it in the pan.
Well, you can put it in a pan,
Yeah.
that's in this, but if you're gonna do flat baking,
That's what that is, a flat, you just put it in the pan.
yeah,
Okay.
where it says you're gonna either use a cookie sheet, pizza, a pizza stone works really good. That's just for flat baking. And that's why you wanna use your lamé if you're gonna do flat baking. You can do flat, you wanna make some cuts in it, otherwise your bread will not keep the shape and it will collapse. And I have sharp knives, and some people are really good, and like my daughter, they make nice decorations and everything else.
How can you cut it down?
But like 3/4 of an inch. Sometimes it's more, it's not precision, but you just want to allow it to keep its shape. You want to bake it at 400 degrees, almost everything. I usually start it out at 30 minutes, but I always do it more. And then I temp it 190 degrees. I'm a big believer in thermometers. When I cook with a thermometer, whether it's meat or anything. It's a lot easier if you just do it that way. And then you want to do it for at least 190 degrees for the bread. You can take it out 185, it'll cook a little bit longer. Then after you take it out, get a little rack or something like that to put it on. Because if you cut it right away, it's really hard not to cut it right away because your house really smells good.
Would you want to take it out of that pan right away?
Yes, yes, if you have it in a bread pan, take it out. In a bread pan, put a little oil or something or spray on it and it helps. But the silicone is a little bit better.
Could you show the shape again if you're doing the flat?
Sure. Okay, this will come out about like this big.
Okay,
And what you do is you just grab it by the side, you don't, a little bit of pressure, not a lot, you're not squeezing it.
okay.
You just turn it, bring it back an inch. 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 Then you want to do that like about, until you'll feel it come together, usually 5 or 6 to 10 times. And then your dough will keep its shape.
And that's, you've done your first proof, you've done your second proof, and now you're like ready to.
Now you're ready to bake.
Okay,
That's when you take this and you invert it.
okay.
You take your bannikin, invert it like this,
Okay.
and it'll have this shape. It'll have this shape, and then you make your cuts. You want to have your oven preheated. Just like anytime you're going to bake anything, you want to preheat your oven. Any questions? Yes, please.
Do you use any rice flour, or how do you keep it from not sticking to your bannock?
Oh, yeah, you flour bannock.
Do you use just plain old AP flour?
I use just AP flour. I have a bunch of different kinds of flour, but I use AP flour for all the basic things. And if you do like, from experience talking, when I did flour, the bannock, and you get the doughs in this little creases in here, that's really fun to get out of there. So, a little bit of flour works really easy. Speaking of flour, if your dough is sticky, you get dough in your hands, and you don't know itself, grab a little flour, rub your hands together, and all the dough will come right off. Another experience talking.
Do you use a convection oven, or do you just use a?
I use regular oven. I don't have a convection. I don't know much about them, so couldn't begin to say. So, yes, please.
Does water make a difference? Like if you're on city water, if it's chlorinated, if you're on well water, if you've got.
They say it does, but I live in the city and I got the water that I have. And
So
I
that
know,
extra iron in the water.
I'm sure it does make a difference as far as the hydration and everything else that's in it, but
It
that's,
wouldn't kill the yeast or the process of it.
I don't think so. It may make, probably would make a difference if you have a purifier, or if you have a, what do they call that, where it takes all the chemicals out of there? Reverse osmosis or something like that, where they take all the chemicals out. Probably makes a difference, but I can't fire.
When you're discarding your starter, are you just putting it in the garbage? Because I heard you.
I will go through that in a little bit
Okay, perfect.
on the discard.
Okay.
So now I'm gonna cut this bread up and hand it out. And we're gonna have a brief intermission, and we're gonna have Mr. Wilford, science teacher at North Pines, will give a little bit, and then we're also going to have Christine Chappell will do a little bit of thing on her farm and homestead exchange.
Hi, everybody. So, yeah, I'm a science teacher at school. I also have a science and foods class that I taught, and Tom inspired me, and we've done sourdough with the kids the last 2 years. They fed it and name it, and they pick a recipe, and we go do stuff with it, so that's been awesome. We have honeybees at school, and I brought in some honey. We can put on, we're gonna have some bread or muffins later as well.
English muffins?
Yeah, English muffins. We've had hives at school for like 10 years. The honey, we have an adopt bee program that people who adopted bees and help support the program. And they get a little jar of honey, and they'll get some lip balm that we make with the beeswax as well. But Tom just wanted me to just talk a little bit about that and I guess where honey comes from. I mean, every honey we have every year is different based upon where the bees, what flowers the bees visit, so the color will change and the flavor will change as well. And then I've done my own starters. Even at school we do this. We actually I add a little honey to our starter, try to get a little more of the, because we're using all natural wild yeast to build your starter. So there's wild yeast in our honey, so I'll just add a little bit of that back into our starter as well. Our bees have made 12 gallons of honey in 1 year out of 4 hives. It's just unbelievable. Questions on the honey or the bees or anything like that?
How can we adopt a bee?
That's what I was gonna
To adopt a bee, the best way would be go to the high school building, and the girls, ladies in the office, the secretaries, they'll have forms there, and you can go adopt a bee. It's $20. It's an awesome program, and we just ordered bees for school yesterday, Friday, to enjoy it. And we do have a community bee. We have a community bee organization, the Headwaters Bee Club, which meets here. We met, and we're meeting. I can look at it. It's 20 April 24th. But our goal for that is there's no resource in the county. April 21st, Monday at 6 o'clock, is a meeting here. There was no county resource for honeybees, so Joy Kalkovich is a teacher, middle school and high school teacher. Sarah Simic is an elementary teacher. Ivy Lapp is up in Land O'Lakes, and they also have bees. She got bees going at the Land O'Lakes campus for the elementary kids up there. So we basically started this Headwaters Bee program for a resource for any beekeepers in the area. Our goal is to be a resource to bounce ideas off of, help people get started, but also like rent out, or not rent out, but just loan out equipment. If you need an extractor for your honey, we'll have extractors. You can just sign up and take for the weekend and extract back. So there's all kinds of stuff like that. We're going to work on like bee treatment equipment that everybody can just kind of share. It's expensive. It's not like, it's not an $8 per pound.
Yeah.
So it can be expensive. Any other questions?
Do you sell the honey?
So if we have excess honey, all the honey goes back to our bee sponsors. So if you adopt a bee and the bees make enough honey,
Want to grab some bread?
you'll get a jar of honey like that.
Yeah,
If there's excess, we have sold in the past. This year we didn't have enough.
Walk around and
Do the kids do the artwork?
Yeah, then so you can see the labels. We have a contest, 7th and 8th graders, and
Very
then
cute.
we have the whole school vote on which ones they want. The top 10 or so get put on there. So they're pretty awesome. They're awesome. That's a really cool part of that. Yeah.
So, are you trying to increase the number of bees you have, or the number of hives you have?
We like when we started in. I don't know, we've been doing it for 10 years or 11 years. And we started, everybody said when I started, start with 2 hives. So you can always, you know how your hives are doing when you can compare them to another hive. So you know if they're the same or not, with activity and all that kind of stuff. So I think the most hives we've had at school is 6. We had 4, we're down to 1 that survived. I have 2 at my house, I'm down to 1 that survived, and I don't know, the cold this week and the cold next week might just be the end of the line for them. But they'll surprise you. They will surprise you. So it's the number. I would say the Headwaters Bee Club is more just like helping everybody out, and if we can, there's no sounding board around, so that's really what it is. I hope that answered your question.
Well, thanks.
Are the wildfires in California going to affect?
Well, it was just, Chris Hansen was just on the news, I don't know, Wednesday night about another bee collapse that's going on with commercial beekeepers, mainly in California, where they're finding up to 90% hive loss or 100% hive loss. So we ordered our bees Friday, we're gonna order more bees on Monday, and there's gonna be a huge demand for bees from commercial beekeepers. So we'll see how the little guy does with getting his bees. So that's the main thing. It's all about, most of the bees come from California, some we get, come from Georgia, some are from Ohio, so it depends. California's the big,
Normal.
the big producer and supplier, yeah.
To keep them over winter, you mentioned the cold. Can you keep them outside or should you keep them in a building?
Yeah, the building's okay, but you can't fool the bees into thinking it's actually summer out, because then they're gonna fly all over the place. You can store them in cool buildings, but then it also has to be completely dark in there. There's a certain thing with that. We wrap them, we put wax cardboard boxes on the outside to help cut the wind and draw in heat. There's black like bubble blankets we can put on them as well. We put moisture wicking. It's more moisture in winter than anything else. I always tell the kids, it's like the bus windows when you ride to school, they're completely covered in moisture. So the same thing will happen in the hive, but then it'll start dripping down on the bees. So we have moisture wicking covers that have actually held, we weighed them before and after, they hold a gallon of water, 8 pounds heavier. Yeah, and then, and we feed them, we'll have additional feed packs to them, which is like a solid feed. And then if it's warm, we'll load up the hive and we can additionally throw additional feed in on them as well. So next week, we'll know more late next week, yeah.
Did you say the honey goes back to the people that sponsor?
Yeah, so if we have enough, and we've been pretty fortunate the last few years that the bees have done well enough we have like 100 bee sponsors. So it's 100 little jars, and that's a lot of honey, it adds up. And then, so bee sponsors will get a jar of honey, and then they get 2 lip balms that we make.
Are you going to be doing another program like you did, where you can come in and watch you with the extruder?
Yeah, that's it. So every September, we have bee days at school. We extract honey, you can see how that process, you can visit hives, get in a suit, go out and visit the hives. The kids make little bee hotels for like mason bees that you can take with you, and there's all kinds of great stuff that goes on that day. It's usually 3rd week in September, somewhere around there.
Mason bees,
Yeah.
so we've got those around here.
Yep.
If you built so the community garden up at Atlanta Lakes, if we built mason bee homes.
Yeah.
Like on our fence around the garden,
Yeah.
would they come?
They would still, I would sure that they'd find that, sure. It's like, I look at my boat and I'm trying to get a screw out from the head of my trolling motor, and it's all caked with mud from the, just any little thing gets packed in there by these mason bees.
Okay.
But sure,
So they're
they
good
find that.
good
Yeah.
pollinators, right?
And I know it, we bought in like cardboard tubes and made our own, and then Joy Calcafin, she does it with 7th graders, and you can just drill holes into a block of wood, and there's all kinds of simple things you can do. Yeah.
And the mason bees are pollinators?
I'm not sure if they are. I would imagine, I have no idea if mason bees are, but it's just helping. I would say that they are, because it's a way to help local pollinators that we've done. Yeah, what do I have to say about honeybees? Honeybees are the only the only animal that produces food for man, that makes a food for man as in honey. 1/3 of your bite is from one third of your food is from pollinators. So. And then what Chris Hansen said, if pollinators go, it's 7 years before the entire food chain's gonna collapse, so. Christine. Yeah, Christine's gonna talk about new farm and homesteading initiative.
We have another program here, it's great.
So, Todd mentioned that they had formed a group because there was no resource here, so the people that do bees are coming together and sharing knowledge, and that's kind of what we're going to do, or we're hoping to. We moved here about 2 years ago. We sold our business down in the Milwaukee area and bought some land in Conover and decided to homestead.
Be careful, I
Sure. In the middle of our 40s, we're starting over. So, but coming up here from, southeastern Wisconsin, it's totally different to grow here. It's totally different finding the resources, meeting people, and we love being face-to-face with people. We, love getting together to do bread, whatever. I'd rather do it with someone than have to sit in my kitchen and do it by myself. So establishing those relationships. So we had a brainstorm here, and we thought we'd start something called the Farm and Homestead Exchange. And kind of what we want to do with that is create a connection point for people who are doing things, whether it's just you just bake bread, or maybe you've been doing these for years, maybe we just met Frank in 3 Lakes, he farms with a horse. That's awesome. And there's all kinds of things. People are gardening, they want to start greenhouses, they want solar power, all these different ideas that people have. Maybe they want to be more sustainable. And but where do you start? So bringing people together to say, hey, this is my idea, I want to do bees, or I have bees, but they die every year, what's spring management, what do we need to do? We actually used to have 11 hives down in southeastern Wisconsin, but now we know if we're up here, we've heard all kinds of other issues that are when you try to have bees up here. So our practices down there may not work here, so we would want to collaborate with people. And how do you meet people? And you know, I don't know what you do, you probably have some neat skill that I would love to know about, and you, but I don't know that and I can't meet you except randomly. So we're trying to bring people together to learn and share, and you know, it may be something that maybe you have a passion that you want to do. Maybe you make bread so much and you want to start selling it to local restaurants. We want to connect the restaurants with someone that's doing this, or more garden or farm to table. You know, you really enjoy gardening and you can bring that produce to a local restaurant and they want to buy it from you, and now you have a way to have an income at home and you don't have to go find a job 45 minutes away or something. So just trying to connect people, trying to bring together people to share and to learn, and it could be anything. It could be woodworking, crafting, soil, composting, solar powered greenhouses, gardening, beekeeping, maple syrup, animal husbandry, foraging, fermenting. It's endless. And everybody has something to share. And so we're just right in the middle of getting all of our flyers and everything ready. I do have one up here if you want to talk to me after. You can write down our introductory meeting is going to be at the end of March here at the library. We're going to have one on a Saturday and one on a Monday just to kind of accommodate people's schedule. So if you have any other questions, you know, feel free to see me after.
Thank you. How is it going to be, like on a website? Are you going to have a website or for contacting?
We are very much, my husband and I are very much into face-to-face. So we do not have email, we don't even have internet at our home. We come here and we have lovely people like Jamie who help us do that kind of thing. So we will have a phone number on here and you are welcome to call us. And we are happy to get together. We are happy to talk to you on the phone. We are happy to meet you at the meeting. Whatever you'd like to do, we are flexible.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Going to do the Jeffers? Yeah. Can you get money yourself, typing?
I'll do that, I'll look at that. That's fine. Cover, do I cover them or not cover them? It said cover them.
Do 5 minutes and then cover. We're gonna make some English muffins now. Reason why we're doing English muffins here is because you use on a griddle, you don't put it in the oven. So
Oh.
they're kind of nice. Anybody
They're
else?
really good. They're really good, not kind of nice.
Was that ready? Okay.
Yeah.
Good. On page 4, I have just some optional add-ins, and there's many, many more that you can put in there. Rye flour, cracked wheat, buckwheat, oatmeal. If you make oatmeal bread, you just soak it in water. Takes away dryness. Millet, quinoa, jalapenos and olives, cheese, maca tea powder, charcoal powder, beer. Darker beer is better. When I heavier beer. 2 weeks ago, I got some of the porter from the Tribute, and I made 2 loaves of bread, and I brought them in just to cut them. And I made some honey butter, and I just gave it away during the Tribute because it's really fun, and I like their beer. Then when they were, I give away a lot of bread. When they were doing the ice castle here, and they were doing it, I bought them some hot cinnamon rolls to give to all the guys that were working. It's a fabulous thing.
Wow.
Don't you have to like soak your quinoa or your millet? Or
You can.
Put it in raw? And
You can, my cracked wheat, I just put in raw because I like a little, it's the reason why I put the cracked wheat in there. Or if I do the millets or anything, I like having the little seeded things in there. Some people don't like it, then you would soak it.
Okay.
It's almost all of this is personal preference, whatever you want to do. Don't be afraid, just be creative. It's just bread.
So where it's optional, like in this loaf of bread, that's where you would add the 40 grams.
Yeah.
So that's how you would know how much to
Well,
add for your.
some of this is different. There's I have probably a dozen cookbooks at home. I don't know when I've opened them last. Excuse me, but I use the internet. I just pop it in, you can find any. I still use one of my best books, but, you can find out, if you just type in sourdough quinoa bread, you'll see 10 recipes. If you do any of these things, sourdough cinnamon, the cinnamon rolls are phenomenal. I just want to go through quickly, if you're going to use no yeast in your bread, it's a 6-hour method for stretching and fold for bulk proofing. And then you're going to want to do an overnight method. When you're doing the bread, there are 2 acids that come out. And the live yeast and the active bacteria feeds on the sugar, the starches in the dough. The first one is called a lactic acid, and that's a very mild acid. I don't like a real sourdough. Many people do. If you want your sourdough to be more sour, more piquant, you put it in the refrigerator overnight. It makes an acidic acid, which is a vinegary acid. I don't know why it works in your refrigerator, but it does. Just leave it in overnight. You can also leave it in 2 days overnight, and it'll become more sour.
Is that right before you're ready to bake it, or proofing, or what's
When you're proofing it, after you've done your first proof.
Okay.
After you've done your first proof, if you want a more sourdough, you just leave it in the refrigerator overnight.
Okay.
And that gets the second acid. You can keep it in the fridge up to 3 days if you want to have a more piquant flavor. I don't prefer that. Many people do. In fact, when I had the first glass, one guy got really mad. He said, well, I don't make it that way, but here's how you make it that way. So that's why I put that in there. Dutch ovens. I have one, and I've made 2 loaves of bread in my Dutch oven. One turned out really good. One did not turn out so good. And I burnt my hands on it. So I just ordered yesterday a sling so that you can put it, the dough on the sling, and then when it's done, you can lift it out. I just didn't feel like burning my hands anymore, so I'm gonna try that. I'm sure it'll work because it's gotta work better. It's gotta work better than burning my hands.
Yeah.
I'm just not a real fan of that. Here's just some examples. Make all different kinds of breads, make English muffins, which we're making. Hamburger buns come out unbelievably good. Cakes come out, they're really moist. Cookies, they're moister. Make French bread. I didn't bring it in, but they have a French bread raising pan for French bread and baguettes. If you don't use that, it's not going to work very well. There are folding techniques that you will do when you're doing French bread. I'll just go real quickly. You take your roll and you get your shape so it's about as long as what it is. You take from the bottom half of it and you fold it up to the middle, and then you take the top and you fold it all the way down. And you do that 3 times. And then you put seam side down on your French bread thing like this. You just fold the bottom halfway up and take the top and you fold it all the way down. When you're making French bread, you want to put some water in your oven to get some steam so it'll get really nice and crispy on the outside. That's really good. Cinnamon rolls come out phenomenal. pizza dough is very, very good. I have some hints if you'd like afterwards to come in. I usually keep a couple of pizza doughs in my freezer. It'll stay in there for a month, and then you just take it out in the morning. At night, you take it out and you make a pizza. You won't buy it. You won't buy frozen anymore. Make crackers, Kaiser rolls. Sourdough bread has a tendency to get a little crispy on the edges. If you don't like it, there's things you do with your stale bread. Make a panzanella salad, croutons, and then you chop it up and you get a whole bunch. I usually, if I'm running a little short, I'll take a couple pieces of bread and cut them up and leave them out. If you keep your bread in here, it will eventually get a little greenish color. But if you put it out in your counter and let it dry, it won't. The sourdough has a tendency to stop that from doing if you let it dry out. Make breadcrumbs. They're the best breadcrumbs. You look on the side of a container of breadcrumbs, it's the same thing on bread. Look what's in there. Look what's in there. You won't like it. Use it for doing fish, cutlets, meatloaf, casseroles. Worst comes to worst, feed the birds. Feed the birds. I just put a little recipe that I use for the sourdough English muffins that we're making. It'll be just a little bit. Here's some discard uses. Cookies, cakes, crackers, banana bread, pizza crust, pancakes or waffles, pie crust. Make your own pie top, Pop-Tarts, tortillas, makes a phenomenal tortilla. Make muffins, biscuits, cinnamon rolls, coffee cakes. There's just all sorts of things to do with the discard. And if you don't want to use it, you're throwing away flour and water. So it's not that big of a deal. So, how are we doing?
I think we're in good shape.
Second?
I probably think we are.
A little bit longer.
One.
A little bit.
Did you do something else for the English muffins,
What?
to make them English muffins instead of just bread?
I just did the recipe here. I think what some of it makes it English muffins is the milk and butter. These means the reason moms are here.
So does it take 5 days to make bread then here?
What's that?
Does it take 5 days, I mean, before you can make a loaf of bread? Or
The
am I
starter?
reading- Well, with the starter. does
That's
it
if you
take
make
5
your
days?
own.
That's if you make your own starter.
Yeah, if you use mine, it'll give you a day.
Oh, that's why I was confused.
If you use my starter, you just want to
Oh,
make
from
it your own.
scratch. Okay, that's helpful.
That's if it's from scratch.
Okay, all right.
Any questions?
For the English muffins, are you still looking for that 190 temperature reading?
Yeah.
Okay,
Headed at 175 right now.
gotcha.
They're okay, but they're better at a little higher temperature. So would you have Pam come up here? She's the expert. Yes, please.
Do you have a favorite, you go on the internet to find recipes, and I know there's tons of stuff. Do you
Yeah.
have a favorite one,
I use King Arthur recipes. To my mind, they just have a tendency to come out really good. I've never,
is that the one that you use for the cinnamon rolls that you're saying is
Yes.
so good?
yes. I use almost all King Arthur recipes. If you're popping it up there and one of the recipes says King Arthur, that's the one I use. I'm going to have my wife, Pam, help me dish up your starter because I usually have it all over the table. I have my limitations.